All right, guys, so we're gonna get started right here. We're gonna start burning some rods, see how it looks. So right here we have a 7018 rod, a 1/8. We're gonna be running at about 130 amps. We're gonna show you the do's and don'ts. So right here we got a stinger. Your stinger right here, on the inside of your stinger will have different settings for you to set your rod. If you want your rod to be coming out straight from that stinger, the top setting would be straight, the bottom setting will be straight, and then you have another setting in the middle where it's pointing up about a 30 degree push angle, and then we'll have another one with the opposite pointing down. Okay, we're just gonna keep it simple. We're gonna put it in the very bottom, just coming out straight. We're gonna run a bead right here on this side. Make sure whenever you're getting set up to weld, make sure you have a good stance. Kind of like if you're gonna be playing baseball, you don't wanna be welding, have your feet too close to each other, and you're gonna be unbalanced. So open up your footing, make sure you're balanced. Keep your right hand right here on the bottom side of your stinger. You don't want your hand on the top. It's gonna start getting hot pretty quick. Keep your hand right here on the bottom, and then your left hand, just your fingertips right here. If you end up putting your left hand right here on top, you're gonna end up taking all the heat on your hand whenever you're getting closer to that plate. So right hand in the bottom, left hand just pretty much just to stabilize yourself. Right here, once you get practice, you don't have to really lean on nothing or anything like that. But right now, since you're starting off, don't try to be Mr. Badass. Get yourself one of these seat clamps, the vice seat clamp. We could clamp it right here on the edge of that plate. For you guys that don't know how the seat clamp pretty much works, if you see this little bolt right here on the seat clamp, you could adjust it. If you open it up, if you're losing that bolt up, you'll see your seat clamp open up right here. So depending on how thick of your plate that you're using, that you're trying to clamp down, that's what you need to pretty much adjust. So right here, we put it on this plate. It's too loose. We're gonna adjust the bolt. Turn it one or two turns. We'll turn it again. Still a little bit loose. Tighten it up. So pretty much, get one of these bad boys, you put it on the plate, clamp it, and you pretty much can hold your forearm on there. So whenever you're welding, you got a little bit more control on that. So remember that. This pretty much runs you about 15 bucks. Go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any welding supply close by, and you'll pretty much find those right there off the shelf. All right, guys? So right here, we're going to get started with the first pass. So some of you guys are probably wondering, how does this thing work? Do you have a button to press it to turn on, or what the hell are you going to do right there? Well, remember, guys, we already have our ground right here from our machine. This is pretty much our positive current. So whatever you pretty much have your machine set up on your amperage, that's how hot it's gonna burn that rod. Whenever negative and positive touch, it'll make that reaction and it'll start burning that rod automatically. So whatever you have grounded off, if you end up touching it with this bad boy, it's gonna arc off, it's gonna turn on, okay? So be real careful. So right here, when we start, for you to be able to start off this rod, this is your plate. You're barely just gonna go over that plate and scratch it. Okay, it's kind of like when you're turning on a match, but instead of you putting pressure on your matchbox and scratching it, do not put pressure, just barely scratch it on there. Barely scratch it on that plate and it'll turn on. If you have a brand new rod like this one, you shouldn't have trouble. If you dab at it at that first time and you have a new rod, it's gonna get stuck. So remember, just scratch it when you have a new rod. Right now we're gonna go over whenever you have a used rod is a whole different story right there. So right here, we're gonna get started and run a first pass. We're just gonna scratch it just to turn on the rod, okay? Remember that. All right, guys, so before you start off, always double check your body placement, your footing. Make sure you have an open stance on that. Your right hand will be on the clamp, and your left hand, we're putting our forearm on the seat clamp, and then we're gonna hold it right here. If you pay attention to this rod right here, we have pretty much a 10 to 15 degree drag angle. Why are we dragging it? And why do we have that angle? We pretty much want that angle so our arc could throw our metal towards the side that we wanted to build up. So we're gonna bring it from the top to the bottom. That's pretty much the easiest way. If you line up your rod and you just bring your weld down this way, you're pretty much just worrying about if you're doing your movement side to side or if you're going back and forth. It's easier to keep it straight this way than if you're welding and you're trying to weld this way. If you're going from left to right, your rod could pretty much come down or to pretty much come up. If you just pretty much hold that rod straight, give it that push angle, start it off, and pretty much just drag it, okay? You want to use a pretty much steady rhythm. Do not try to do a lot of movement. If you're doing a lot of movement, keep that movement on your wrist. You don't want to do your movement from your shoulders. If you're doing your wrist, it's easier to control it because by the time that movement travels that whole rod to the tip of that rod, it's going to be way more movement. So minimum movement on that on your wrist, okay? Real tight movement on that. If you see your rod moving a lot side to side, that's a lot. That's a lot of movement right there, okay? So we're going to start off right here. Pretty much scratch it, and then we're going to bring it down this way, okay? Okay, guys, we're set up. We're ready to go. We're going to scratch it. We're going to do this one. Hopefully, this is pretty much how a good bead or good weld should look like on this one. Don't mind the hood. The hood's a money maker. Don't worry about it. So right here, we're going nice and steady, side to side. Keep that rod real close to your plate. Nice and steady, nice and steady. Make sure as you're welding, you're pushing down with your rod. Your rod is getting shorter as you're welding, so you got to keep pushing so you can keep depositing metal on your best plate. This right here is what we're expecting to have a good weld. So this right here, if you see your slag picking up like that, that's money right there, dude. Money right here. Just be careful with that. That's pretty hot, okay? So if you look at this weld, I think we did a pretty good job on it. So right here we have a pretty much a short arc. We're moving slightly side to side. Like I said, just keep that rod real close to your plate. You don't want to feel the rod stabbing at your plate. Just keep it real close to the plate, kind of like if it's just floating on there. Alright guys, so we're running the bead right here. We're trying to get a good angle for you guys to be able to see the weave and how far away we are from the plate. So right here we're trying to run our next bead right next to this one, but we got to make sure that weld overlaps into this other weld at least about halfway. So we're going to come this way. The center of your rod will stop on that edge of that weld that we did right here, pretty much this edge right here. So you want your center of your rod to stop there and just come slightly out. If you're able to see that movement, that's pretty much how much you actually are going to be moving when you're welding. Stop on the side about a second. So hopefully we get a good shot of this so you guys could get a way better idea than just watching somebody weld. So right here you should be able to see where I'm going to the side and then I stop on the line. Slightly to the line, slightly to the side. Make sure you stop on your sides. Keep that rod close to your plate. You can see that metal building up onto the other weld. That's actually what we want. Make sure we tie it in onto the other side. You don't want a valley or something in between the two welds. You could have porosity, slag, entrapment, and stuff like that. All right, guys, so right now we're gonna run another bead right next to it. This is a nice bead what we have right here, and we got a pretty good weld going on. Our amperage is working pretty good. But now we're gonna show you guys how it looks like whenever you're going a little too fast, okay? Vamos con la chancla. So right here we're going a little bit fast. If you pay attention behind my rod, you won't see that metal build up nicely. It's pretty much it looks like a little wiggly snake just going around the plate. We're going too fast. We're not even stopping on the side. We're just going fast. Our slag is stuck into the weld. It don't even look consistent. The slag is not curling up or none of that. So right there, you could already see you got yourself a bad weld. We're gonna have to wire wheel that one. We're gonna wire wheel it so we can take a look, see how it turned out. Just remember, guys, every single weld that you do out in the field or wherever you're at, especially if you're at school or somewhere at home, make sure you wire wheel a damn thing. Just don't weld and then walk away from it, or weld and weld the next one. You're already starting off in the wrong foot, you know. Make sure you learn how to do it the right way, so when you're out in the field, you keep that same work ethic, same quality. You don't want to go out there and half-ass shit, and you ain't gonna be at that job site very long. This is pretty much how it looks like when you're going too fast. You see all the little wiggly lines where your weld is stepping away from, your ripples are stepping away from each other too far away. You're not depositing enough metal. Just looks like a little wiggly line. That right there, you're going too fast. You need to slow it down so you can deposit more metal and let that metal fill up. It's common sense. If you do a weld, wire wheel it, take your time, find the solution to the problem. You don't want to just weld and then finish the damn plate and then you're like, oh, well, shit, I was going too fast. Okay, take your time. So right here, this one is way too fast. I wasn't even stopping on the sides. We were just pretty much being hurried up. Okay, guys, so now we're gonna do another one right next to that one. We're gonna be going way too slow. You're gonna see a lot of metal build up on this one. So right here we're pretty much staying in the same spot. We're stacking up a lot of metal, You're gonna see the difference right here on this one. If you see that puddle way too big compared to the diameter of your rod, you're just going way too slow, Bubba. You need to step it up a little bit. All right, guys, so that's our pretty much our weld. Let's see how that one turned out. Okay, watch that slag, is pretty hot. So if you look at this one, look at this bad boy. Look at how the height is. Look at how much height this weld has. Look at how much height this weld has. It's pretty high. It's too fat. It's way too much metal. Okay, so how do you know if you're going too fast, too slow? Look at this one, the buildup, and then look at your last weld that we did before. It was all pretty much all skinny, it was all thin, you know, all wiggly lines everywhere on that one. So now look at the difference from your rod. If you could guess which rod we used on this one, it'll be this one right here. You see it's really short. We pretty much used up the whole rod. And then if you look at this one, we have way more rod left over on this one when we run that skinny, that fast weld. Why? Because we didn't deposit enough metal. We were going too fast. On this other bulky weld, we use this one. We deposited way too much metal. That's why it's really short. And then now on this one, you can see the difference from this one to this one when we were running our first weld, when they were coming out pretty nice. So If you're going too slow, speed it up. Okay, so now we're gonna do one. We're gonna lower down our temperature, and we're gonna show you guys how to run one when it's really cold. You're gonna see how that rod is gonna have trouble on starting up. While I'm welding, it's gonna be really cold. It's gonna be hard to burn that rod, and then our boy Valentin in the camera, he's gonna turn up the remote and turn it up as hot as we can, so you can see the difference of how it looks when it's really, really hot. Whenever it's cold, you're gonna have a hard time trying to burn that rod. You're gonna be getting stuck and stuck and stuck. Whenever it's really hard, it's just gonna burn that rod like nothing, like butter. You're gonna see a bunch of BBs going everywhere. Whenever you finish welding and you see that puddle real big or a lot of BBs everywhere, that means you're going too hot, okay? 90 amps. We have it at about 90 amps right there. It's considered pretty cold. Let's see how it goes. So if you're able to see that, it's having a hard time trying to burn that rod. So now we're gonna have our camera guy, Valentin, turn it all the way up. You see the difference? That's welding way too hot. Now right there, we turned it back down. We're gonna go ahead and wire wheel that, and let's see how that weld turned out. All right, so right here we were having a hard time trying to get that rod to get it going. Right here it's really hot. So you see how we got that crater in that plate. It's kind of digging into that plate, eating it up, and then we have a bunch of BBs everywhere. That's from your rod being way too hot. So this is pretty much how it looks like, all those BBs going all the way over the plate. All right guys, so have you ever heard the term long arc or short arc? And you don't know what that means? Well, the long arc or your arc is pretty much the length from your plate to the tip of your rod. So if you have your rod pretty close to the plate, that's called a short arc. And then if you have it far away from your plate, that's called your long arc. Sometimes you think, hey, if you're welding and you're blowing through your root and you're like, oh, it's too hot, let me pull that rod away from that plate or whatever. Instead of cooling it down, you're actually making that weld a little bit hotter. Since you're lifting up your rod, you have a longer arc and you're letting that heat spread out, okay? So it's actually getting hotter. So remember, arc length is the distance from the plate to your rod. Whenever you're welding, you don't want to pick up your rod away from your plate. You want it pretty nice and close onto that plate, okay? Kind of like it's floating over that plate. If you pick up your rod and you have a long arc and you're too far away from your plate, you're going to have inconsistency in your weld. You're going to have a bunch of BBs all over your plate. You're not going to have a constant metal deposit on your weld. It's not going to be consistent all the way through your start to the finish. So we're fixing to start welding right here. We're going to do our tight arc first. We're going to have that rod real close to the plate. So right there we have a rod really close to the plate. It's actually sitting on the plate. You don't want your rod sitting on the plate. So now we're fixing a long arc. So that's our arc length right there. That's a long arc. If you see a bunch of flame on the tip of your rod, or if you see your metal dripping, if you see the metal dripping off of your rod, that's way too far away. So now we have a short arc, tight arc, whatever you want to call it. Now we have a long arc. You pretty much just want your rod just floating on your plate, floating on the plate. You don't want to be stabbing at the plate either. If you feel your rod touching your plate, you're too close to the plate. Just keep that in mind. That's a long arc right here, short arc. Okay guys, so right here you can see where we were stabbing at the plate. You see how your weld looks like it's just bunched up? You could get that either because you're welding too cold or you have a short arc. You're stabbing too much into that plate. So now right here we have a long arc. If you see that inconsistency on our weld, we were too far away from that weld, so we weren't consistent on our metal deposit. So right here we're doing a good job. We just had our rod floating over the plate. We didn't have a long arc length or a short. Now right here, we picked it up again. You can see the difference between our welds. Throughout the weld, you can see the difference. Right here, we had a really tight stabbing the plate, really short arc, and then right here, we had a really long arc. Okay, so look at the difference. Whenever you're long arcing, you're gonna get all those BBs again. You could get porosity. So right here, if you see on this side, we got porosity right here on this side of the weld. So pretty much just look at the visual of your weld. It'll tell you a lot. You will learn from it, and just try to fix your mistakes. Don't keep welding. If you're doing something wrong, make sure you take care of it. Okay guys, a little quick tip here. So right here we got a brand new 7018 1/8 rod, brand new. And then right here we got a rod that we pretty much used up halfway. You see the difference on that tip? Okay, just remember, whenever you have a brand new rod, for you to start it off with that brand new rod, all you're gonna do is just scratch it. Whenever you're scratching on a brand new rod to start it off, it's gonna be real easy for it to turn on. So you gotta be real careful. If you stab at the plate with your rod will get stuck on that plate. If your rod gets stuck on that plate, don't even think about grabbing that rod. If it's been stuck for a couple of seconds, there's current going through that rod. It's gonna be really hot. So just be careful with that. Another thing, whenever you have a used rod like this one, that is pretty much used halfway on that tip, you're gonna have to hit the plate. Once you hit that plate and you get a spark to it, now just go back and scratching it. There's no need for you to be grabbing the rod and then chipping the tip. It's pointless. There's no need for you to get on the ground and hit it on the concrete. You don't gotta do all that. Just hit it a little bit harder on the plate. Once it's throw that spark, scratch it. Do not hit it again. If you end up hitting it again, you're gonna get stuck. So we're gonna do a little trial right here, and then we're gonna show you guys how that works. Okay, so right here we have the brand new rod. Like I said, when you're using a brand new rod, just scratch that rod on your plate. Just scratch it on the surface, it will turn on. Do not stab at it. You don't wanna stab with the new rod, you wanna scratch first. Okay, you see how that easy that was just to turn it on, just scratching it? Because you have a brand new rod, it's gonna catch that current. You got bare metal with bare metal. So right here we don't have a new rod anymore. We have a used rod. So since we have this flux right here around this rod touching the plate first, it will not turn on. So look, you see that? I'm putting it over the plate, it's not turning on. Why isn't it turning on? Because we don't have the metal touching the plate. We have the flux, so keep that in mind. So we got to chip this flux first before we go onto the plate to try to weld it. So that's when you stab at the plate. Once you get that spark, that's when you're going to start coming back and scratching it, okay? So we're going to stab it. We got that spark that we wanted. Now we're just going to scratch it. See how easy that is, guys? If that rod don't turn on, stab it a little bit harder. There's no need for you to get on the ground or grab it with your glove and chip the tip off of it. Okay? So remember that. If it don't want to start, just stab it until you get that spark. Once you get that spark, you know it's going to turn on, just scratch it. If you can't get it to turn on, hit it a little bit harder. I don't know if they see you doing this in the field, they're going to know you're green right off the bat. Okay? Don't be going on the concrete and hitting the floor. Just hit the down plate a little bit harder and you'll get it running. All right, guys. Well, just giving you a little bit of info on that stick 7018, how to get it started off, and how to run a bead and what temperature and whatnot, just to give you guys a little bit more feedback for you guys at home. We do have a good thing going on. We're doing a giveaway. Whatever merch you buy from Texas Made, if it's a shirt, gloves, a welding lens, we do have those really nice welding lenses or stickers. Whatever you guys buy, it'll get you, every $5 will get you an entry for that giveaway. The giveaway is a free 6-week course, and whatever you want to learn, if it's stick on plate, if it's pipe, Hilliard, stainless, whatever you want to learn, the winner will win that free class. Or you could take home $2,000 cash if you guys are not interested in taking that class. After this giveaway, we're gonna have more coming up. The next one should be a welding machine with all your setup, grinder, welding leads, TIG rigs. It might be, hopefully our guy, Tim from Radical Ops throws in a TIG rig right there. Hopefully we get a couple of guys to give something else on our giveaway. But whoever gets on this giveaway, the one we're doing right now with the free welding class, will get a free entry into that welding machine that's coming up next. So that's pretty badass shit. If you ask me, you get to take a free welding course of $2,000 cash, and then on the next one, that free welder. So stay tuned for the next videos.